Good morning, welcome back to another Videopro video. My name's Finn and today I am accompanied by Chris Ling from Jans. Nice to meet you, Chris.
Nice to meet you too, Finn. Thanks for having me.
Today we are talking about Shure. So with the Shure product range, Shure covers everything from your karaoke lover with the Shure SM58 all the way up to your commercial use case in your high-end corporate business rooms. So Chris, let's just jump straight into it. I think the first question that I have for you immediately would be, how does Shure impact everyday Australian businesses, and what use case does that provide? Absolutely.
Well, one of the things that we like to say about Shure is you've heard us for the last 99 years.
Yep.
So next year is Shure's 100th anniversary, and at Jans we've been distributing Shure for well over 35 years as well. So we're very familiar with where people may have experienced Shure products in their everyday lives, either through the music that they listen to. As you mentioned, the SM58. In every pub or high school or somewhere around the country, around the world, there's someone using a Shure microphone somewhere to sing out of. But in regards to the workplace and their everyday life, Shure's been very active on that market right back until the 1940s and 1950s, where they dove really heavily into enabling things for government and military use. Some of Shure's earliest microphones were actually within air pilot headsets in the US Air Force. That really moved out in the 1970s, particularly with a lot of government deployments of microphones in things like Congress or the Pentagon and that sort of stuff. And from there, larger corporates over the last 20 or 30 years have used Shure microphones in a whole bunch of stuff. The last 10 to 15 years has really seen this absorption into having high quality audio with video conference systems. Yeah. A lot of that video conference system history goes back to when it was only just a couple of different hardware vendors that had specific codecs in video conferences, like legacy Polycom, or where Cisco came out of, where they would only allow a certain amount of things to extend their audio capabilities. And Shure was very early on with their microphones of being of high quality to bring really good audio into those systems. That was all based on old analog technology. And about 10 years ago, just under 10 years ago, Shure came out with their first beamforming intelligent microphone. As you might think of it, intelligent microphones and intelligent technology has been what's been on the rise in the workplace in many formats and many form factors over the last 10 years, and definitely in the last 5 years we've seen an acceleration of that. So most people who are in their workplace, be it dealing with customers or dealing with other colleagues, internally, multi-sites, national video conference enablements, probably have experienced the audio through a Shure audio system through that video conference suite.
And Chris, what made you notice the development of the technology the most over the last 10 years? So for myself, I would take a big note to COVID. And video conferencing coming out in that space when everyone was forced to work from home. That required a real need for good conferencing audio, and that's where Shure clearly stepped up, and that's why I love talking about the product. So within a conference space, what are the building bricks to creating a good conference room?
Look, you've always got to start with the environment you're in. If you want to have a good football game, and you want a lot of people to attend, you want to look at the stadium, the building that is housing what you're there to do. Yeah. So when you're looking at a video conference space, you've really got to look at the physical environment that you're there for. So building that space, designing it with purpose is the first thing that I would recommend anybody to do when they're thinking about refurbing a room, transforming even someone's office into a smaller video conference room, because that person might be working from home more often, or they might be doing a lot more traveling, or you might just have a change of how you're using your footprint in your workplace. So start with making sure that the video conference space, if you're going to have collaboration and need microphones, anywhere you need a microphone, you need to worry about the acoustics of the room. Yeah. So that's the properties of sound bouncing off different surfaces in the room, or potentially being absorbed by different surfaces in the room, like drapes or curtains or acoustic paneling. There is an Australian standard for the recommended what's called reverb time for a video conference application, and that's classified as being an RT, and RT60 specifically. That means that how long it takes for the sound bouncing around the room to go down by 60 decibels.
Okay.
So the reverb time, if it takes too long for that sound to go down in perceived volume, then it's not fit for purpose to be able to use a microphone in that space, because there's going to become a point where the sound bouncing around the room will compete against the sound coming out of your voice directly into the microphone. So the acoustics is the paramount thing to look at when you're looking at these systems. Once you've got that sorted, then you look at what sort of collaboration, what sort of meeting room you need to have. A lot of it's dependent on the size of the space, how many people you need to fit in the room as well. Yeah. So that will look at which microphone solution you go with. Are you going with a smaller front of room microphone because it might be a table that has 4 people and you've got a 75-inch or 65-inch display on the wall, so you don't need things too elaborate. Maybe the ceiling is not of a quality that you could put things into a ceiling tile. So a lot of people like to drop things in using the ceiling tile grid. Or it could be a more industrial look to your workspace where you've got an exposed ceiling with, you can see all your service ducts and your lighting and things are hanging down, so you might need to think of something that can hang down a bit better. So all of those physical elements are definitely what's going to guide you. It's better to go into a video conference room application to know everything else about how you want to use the room, rather than say, I've got this particular microphone, I want to use it in this room, because it might not be fit for purpose. And I think that's one of the great things that we're able to support with the Shure product is there's a range of things that fit different applications, different installation types, different sizes, that will all meet different solutions to problems as well.
And so the number one thing that I always, or that's very transparent to me with our solutions and coming up with pushing technology forward, but also being able to create a reliable, deployable solution, is the cost of deployment, right? So Shure have done a very good job with reducing the amount of programming time and commissioning time within their products to then be able to pass that cost on to the end user and save them a little bit of money as far as deployment time. So you've bought some toys for us to have a look at today. Yep. What's your favourite?
Oh, my favourite. Look, this is really tough. It's like asking who your favourite kid is. Thankfully, I've only got one child, so she always wins that argument. But I guess I would have to start with probably the newest product we've had to the range, which is called the MXW Next 2. This 2-channel wireless system really meets the needs for a lot of different products in the market. So a lot of people are wanting to add wireless microphones to a video conference situation, or wanting to have a video conference space with a more presentation style approach. Now, when you're deploying traditional video conference, or wireless microphones, sorry, you would generally have a microphone that acts as a receiver.
Yep.
These microphones here, this is a belt pack for a lapel microphone, or it's got its own internal microphone as well. That's a handheld transmitter. These have to send the audio signal to something. Traditionally, that would be an antenna that might go on a wall, and you run an antenna cable back to the comms rack or back to somewhere that has the microphone receiver. Then the microphone receiver will take the audio signal out into another processor to then be part of whatever system you're doing.
So we've got multiple blocks that need to be fulfilled in order to get a working microphone solution.
That's correct.
Right, so why does this product do anything different?
So this is the charging base station. It's also receiving the signal from the microphones directly to the unit on what's called DSPs system. So that's operating in an area called 1.9 gigahertz of transmission, which is a license-free area. And because it's license-free, it can go into almost any space. What happens with the DECT band is that it works in very minute incremental time slots to get the audio signal digitally from the microphone into the unit. Now, this particular unit also has a lot of processing power, and it's got a lot of connectivity in the back of it as well that allow you to work across a range of different applications. So to boil it down to its simplest, say you've got a kitchenette in your small law firm or accounting firm, and you've got a projector and screen that you can plug HDMI into, and someone says, I want to connect up with another branch of our law firm, or we're part of an association we're hosting, and we want to let people come in remotely. We want them to be able to join in the audio. Let's use somebody's laptop. You might have Representative A bring their laptop, say, hey, I've got Microsoft Teams on my laptop, let's plug that in. And they're like, well, how are we going to get some audio into there? We can't just use the little microphone that's inside the laptop. You could plug this in via USB-C at the back here, directly into that laptop, and then all of a sudden you've got microphones going wirelessly, walking around the room in a presentation style, going directly from this unit into that Microsoft Teams laptop and making that a hybrid meeting straight away.
So we can do something very similar to that sort of technology with our 2.4 gigahertz products that you can find on the market. Now, from what I'm understanding, 2.4 gigahertz can be quite unreliable as far as getting that range and getting that good quality experience. And look, I've never had some great experiences with the 2.4 gigahertz. So the DECT range, that's better, isn't it?
Yeah, it's low, it's less congested, there's less traffic around that. 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz is where a lot of normal wireless access points sit as well.
Yeah.
So there's competition on timing and signal strength in that area around your phone going back to the Wi-Fi in the building, or your laptop. That can be really clogged up with a lot of stuff as well. The 1.9 gigahertz works in a lower range where there's less competing qualities around that. It also gives that really pristine digital audio quality across the space too. So yeah, and what's common across all of these products from Shure is the fact that Shure have managed to make sure they're leveraging the power of your network across everything. So all the video conference microphones that we'll get into a little bit later, they all connect via one Cat5 or Cat6A cable, going back to leveraging your network switch, using networked digital audio to send signals for control as well, and then that comes out and connects usually via USB to a compute like a Microsoft Teams NUC, or even maybe into something like a Neatbar Pro that can take USB in to be a third-party audio system, or even into Cisco or Poly. So there's a whole bunch of things that work really well with this stuff, and because you talked about earlier saving time on installation and commissioning, because all this is leveraged off the network, you plug in the endpoints and it's not much different in experience or in timing than deploying a new workstation for somebody, or adding a new printer to the network, or adding another network switch, that sort of thing. So that visibility also works into the next way that people want to use spaces and systems, by having network control and network management of devices as well.
I just struggle to believe it. So you're telling me that if there is one product that can fit nearly every use case on the market, this is it?
Probably the 80-20 rule. Probably 80% of use cases can be done by 20% of products that we've got in this sort of space. Yeah. Absolutely. We could even say you might be a TAFE that has a couple of handheld microphones to teach students and use those wireless microphones for sound reinforcement in the room, but also you might put one of the larger ceiling tile microphones over the rest of the students so they can ask questions, and people who are watching the recording of the teaching, or people who are joining on a hybrid environment, can hear everyone equally. Absolutely.
And Chris, I just have to say I'm fascinated by the build quality of some of the Shure products. Like, so this is a SM58 head here with a transmitter receive arm to it. I'm just astounded by the build quality of that. That's incredible.
I mean, Shure microphones are the most common to get mic dropped, so yeah.
I mean, everybody's been to a concert where they've seen
absolutely
the crowd tossing with the
What's really interesting
microphones
about the wireless microphone conversation as well, sometimes people forget to put them back in the charger, or batteries run down.
Okay.
If you look on the bottom of this, what type of connector is that down the bottom?
It's USB-C.
So say you get to a room and you're like, oh, this needs a top-up charge.
So I can
bring out your phone charger,
So my Apple phone charger
with USB-C
can go straight into this mic
to give it some power. Give it
Very
some extra
good.
juice where you need to.
Wow. Awesome. Well, look, that's not the only product that we have here, and we don't want to spend too long talking about how good this next two is. Should we go a little bit off base and then start talking more about your conferencing requirements, even though that Next 2 does fulfill some amazing requirements, especially with hall spaces and Q&As. But more to the specific everyday use case of your conference room, which is what I'm sure 90% of our audience has actually come to watch, is about the conference room technology. Where should we start? Should we start with the brains of it all? Shure
the P300? Absolutely. So every audio system that has multiple microphones and has to process audio to be suitable for a video conference room experience, but also for even in-room sound reinforcement, needs some sort of signal processor. The P300 has been around for a number of years now, but it's one of the most highly capable devices because it is around what's called a fixed architecture. It's all set. The signal paths within this device are all set, and it's about just opening up what goes where.
Yeah.
What Shure did very early on was make sure that they worked with USB-C peripheral certification for Microsoft Teams and Zoom as well, and some other platforms like Google Meet, because at the end of the day, when you're doing a larger audio system to go into one of those video conferencing platform softwares, you're reducing all of this complexity down to a USB connection. And that USB connection does a couple of things. With the different platform you're using, it signifies to that platform that this is a USB that you recognize in your library of stuff. So this platform can turn off its audio processing and hand it over to the hardware to do it at a higher level. It also means that it can take control commands from that video conferencing platform, like the mute, and it can tell this hardware, mute what's coming out of the microphone from going into the video conference meeting, because we just want to mute the microphone at the moment. That also translates through to the microphone where the light on the microphone will go from green to red. Okay. That's called mute synchronization. So a lot of this was very much put into the P300. The form factor of this means that you could just wall mount this behind a display, the same way that now people are having a lot of their Zoom computers mounted behind the display in a space, because there's more of those spaces happening. It's a single network cable connection that carries both the networked audio and power over Ethernet as well for it. And it also has a couple of analog inputs and a couple of analog outputs for other things that you want to put into the meeting or put into the audio system, as well as getting out different audio from the system. So in Australia, we have a requirement for hearing assistance in meeting rooms where there's amplified audio. We can easily feed that many assistance or hearing assistance from the output of these devices as well, either digitally or via analog as well. So the flexibility here is really good, and what makes this more flexible now is that Shure have an approach where the endpoints that we use have way more smarts, way more capabilities to actually do a lot of their signal processing internally to the microphone to allow these to service larger spaces as well. So the P300 is really a great device to tie a lot of things together. There's also a smaller brother to this called the ANI USB matrix, which is literally just a smaller box that has a certified USB connection and can matrix stuff out of in and out of itself for video conference microphones. So then we move on to say, hey, we've got a small room that fits maybe 4 or 6 people. We need a microphone over the top of everyone because not everyone is looking at the screen, or maybe we need to make sure that we can get everyone equal distance from the microphone to the talkers, so everyone's got a fair and equitable experience in the space. So we've got this MXA 901 that can mount up into the ceiling. It comes with a plate where you can surface mount it to the ceiling, or you can have a whole bunch of different ways to mount it. And this can cover a 6 metre by 6 metre footprint. Does most of its audio processing, single cable connection, and can pair up with an ANI USB matrix or a P300 to give a certified solution for microphone technology. Wow. One of the things about Shure's microphones is we always use multiple channels to pick up multiple talkers simultaneously as well.
That's incredible. So one of the most frequently asked questions that I have from my customers is actually around the DSP. So with the Shure P300 or just any DSP in general, it's always listed on a quote, it's got a price assigned to it, but often the end user doesn't quite know what it actually does. In layman's terms, how would you explain a DSP works? What's the easiest way to understand how a DSP works for our entry-level consumers listening into this?
The best way to explain DSP functionality, whether it's the DSP being used internally in the microphone or in a device like this, is that DSP is really managing the sound that's coming in, making sure you're removing sort of artifacts, tuning that to fit the physical environment that it's installed in, and then helping to manage those audio signals coming in to go out to the right location to where they're going to as well, and being able to treat that at a higher level to make sure that you've got the right acoustic properties covered. So if you put a loudspeaker like the Dante speaker here in one room, it might sound different to a room next door that has a bigger space or more reflective surfaces. That's where you need to shape the way that outputs audio as far as different frequencies are concerned to make it fit that environment. Same thing with the microphones. Sometimes you'll need to take elements or frequencies out of the microphone that might be problematic or stop it from being as intelligible. So a DSP or signal processing helps do that. It also has the ability to manage things like constant noise. So if you're in a room where you might have air conditioning,
okay,
and then all of a sudden the thermostat says, hey, it's a bit warm in here, we're going to kick down the temperature, that means you're going to get more fans coming out of the ceiling.
Because that's one of the number one
So
complaints,
constant
right?
noise reduction, absolutely, yeah.
So I've always got the complaint. Hey, so we've got a great meeting room, nice and big, but nobody can hear us. Or there's a really annoying rustling coming onto our end user on the other end of the call. How do I fix that? And I'm guessing the answer.
So noise reduction goes a big part of that within the DSP. That's why DSPs exist as well. The other main function, particularly in video conferencing, is the presence of what's called echo.
Okay.
When these microphones are listening to the room, they're listening to everything in the room. When people who are remote attendees talk, their voices are coming out of the speakers. That's getting picked up by the microphones. What makes sure that that doesn't go back to the remote attendee is what's called acoustic echo cancellation. The microphones are listening for that signal. They're also getting that signal fed to them by the DSP to make sure, okay, this audio that you're hearing, do not send this audio back down through the USB that's going to the video conference. So that's called acoustic echo cancellation. That has varying different properties within the space that affects how well that process happens. So these microphones can do that internally on a group level, or you can address it at an individual channel level within the P300, or even the IntelliMix Room software, which is a software version of this that can live on your Microsoft Teams compute as well.
Well, Chris, look, I certainly feel like everybody knows the feeling of loading up their PlayStation, throwing on their headset, and all they can hear the entire time is their own voice. So put on a larger scale, what the DSP does is it helps reduce the echo out of the speakers from the far end, and it also helps quieten up the room to make that a good audio experience. And,
absolutely.
And I feel like it extends beyond just having good audio. It's how professional you are. It's how you're reaching out to the customer. If you jump on a meetings call with a customer and you're very well spoken and very well heard, that goes a long way towards doing business and that everyday transaction. It's the most overlooked part of a conference room, and it needs a bigger tick on the priority.
Absolutely. A lot of the time we say a video conference without video becomes radio.
Yeah.
A video conference without audio becomes mime.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, I paid to see a mime artist once. I saw the great Marcel Marceau in Sydney 20 years ago. I think that's the only time I paid to see a mime show. But I pay to hear bands all the time, right? So that experience. But what really underpins the need for a high quality audio system is the fact that, yes, you're very right, branding. Every organisation out there really is concerned and worries about customer experience and internal customer experience as well. Your customer experience speaks volumes about your brand and your investment level and how seriously you take your business. What money are you willing to spend to make sure that your interactions with your customers are as seamless as possible? The idea behind having high quality audio systems in a video conference is to remove the technology, but the technology to enable robust, conversational, intuitive, free-flowing interactions between in-room and remote attendees. You get that conversation being intelligible and free-flowing, you can have a productive, well-rounded meeting or engagement, whatever you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to have group team meetings and you have critical bits of information that you're trying to translate from within the room to people who might be a dispersed sales force for an organisation that might have people in, like say a mining corporation, they're trying to connect with Coober Pedy, they're trying to connect with Perth, they're trying to connect with Mount Isa, they're trying to connect with Brisbane. If that audio isn't intelligible and easy to understand and clear for those people, you might be burning more time going over ground and revisiting different points of the conversation that you've already said. That's wasted time. If the microphones or the audio system makes it harder for you to start a video conference meeting, you think about the pay levels of everybody who's in that room and how much money you're burning internally on the organisation just to get a meeting happening. That's where productivity and return on investment really reflect on the quality of equipment that you put into a space.
Right, that's great words. I mean, I'm sure every boss out there would love their employees to be more productive. So, hey, to me, I'm just hearing a win-win. Bringing it over, so we've got the DSP, and the DSP goes into the mic. So, what about audio? So we've got the microphone that picks up my voice, and the DSP processes it and makes it sound good. This here, this is a speaker.
That's correct.
Okay, so this is how we get sound into my room.
That's how you get sound into the room? Yep.
So looking at this, look, traditionally in residential AV, there's a black and a red, but all I see here is a Cat6.
That's correct.
How's that work?
So that's part of Shure's philosophy of leveraging the enterprise network, or using the network switch for the power and for the routing and everything that has to happen for the audio. So digital audio has been the most prominent development over the last 5 or 6 years in video conference and also in audio in general. Shure utilises a protocol called Dante, which was actually developed in Australia by a company called Audinate, originated back in Sydney. That's probably one of the most widely spread commercial use audio protocols over what's called the IP, or over the internal network, right? So Shure leverage that, but also Shure are able to, with one network connection, have 2 different IP addresses, one to control and monitor the Shure equipment, and one to handle the networked audio coming in and out of that device as well. Okay. So by being able to use that, you've got not a whole bunch of different cable specifications you have to give a builder or electrician when you're building a room or an office space. You can just say run Cat6 cable from here to here in these different points. Some of them are going to connect to the microphone, some are going to connect to the DSP, some of them connect to the speaker, but it's the same cabling standard across everything.
Okay, so with Cat6 cables, so that's like the commercial equivalent of a USB-C cable nowadays?
Absolutely.
Right, okay, so it creates a point of consistency across all your sources. So it's not just AV technicians that can run Cat6A cable, right? It's also your electricians. And so when it comes through with your new infrastructure and putting in a bulk amount of cabling, that's something that can be very easily accounted for, right?
Absolutely. If you're running a big construction project and you've got maybe 2 floors of office space to do, you could say, hey, we've got these AV integrator, Videopro, working on this job, and they've got a whole bunch of different devices going there. They're not necessarily doing all the structured cabling for the job. Instead of having to get them in to run different types of cable and coordinate that can all go into the electrician's cable spec, and they can just keep running cable with all the other stuff that they're doing for the network, or all the other stuff they're doing for the infrastructure. That way, when you guys come in, you're just coming in, plugging stuff into the network, plugging yourself into the network, programming up or deploying the pre-made designs that you've already done on your laptop, and commissioning that stuff. Happens quickly, happens en masse. You can do it from one room to many rooms. That gives you more time to make sure you address the room by room issues for acoustic properties or understanding the equalization of the microphones and the loudspeakers. getting everything deployed across the network makes things way more efficient. Then you can get to testing the rooms faster, you can get user acceptance done quicker, you can absolutely maximize your time as an installer or as a customer to make sure that you're getting everything done efficiently and effectively as well.
So, and we can bring that back to cost of deployment, can't we, Chris? So with deployment, I could send a commissioning technician out for a day or for 2 or 3 hours, and that cost gets passed on to that end consumer. So what Shure appear to be doing is they're just trying to simplify the process. Mm-hmm. And that makes it easier. It reduces the cost for the end consumer, makes the business more productive. Is there any downside?
Not that I can really see. I mean, yes, the way that Shure have structured more of their devices to be extremely capable. For example, hang on, I'll just grab this one over here. This is a larger ceiling tile microphone with a loudspeaker built into it.
Oh.
So rather than having to deploy 2 different devices with a DSP, you've got one device that can go a 4 to 6 person room in the ceiling, and you're centralising a speaker over people as well as a microphone. The benefit to doing that is it makes the accessibility to high quality endpoints and high quality audio much easier for customers to get to. When you reduce costs in one area, you can invest costs in another area. So while people might see some things as appearing to be, oh, that's a big piece of equipment, that must cost the earth, whatever the cost is, you're saving costs in all those other areas. So you've got accessibility to higher quality equipment because they've taken the step of making it easier to deploy, quicker to deploy, less failure points in between. And what the approach that Shure are taking going down the future in the pathway is that now an IT manager could manage all these devices on the network, even on a cloud platform as well. So they could log into a cloud platform and say, hey, meeting room 5 in level 6 on our building in Melbourne needs some help because the installed microphone has gone offline. Is there a problem with the network switch? Let's go and fix that. Or you might be able to update firmware en masse. You may have 4 rooms only in your small accounting firm that takes up half a level of an office tower in Ann Street in Brisbane, but still your IT manager might be working from home that day and there's new firmware to come out. They can log on in a cloud platform and deploy the new firmware overnight so it doesn't disturb anyone's meetings or anything like that.
And is that a mass deployment as well? So
that can be a mass deployment. They could see on their cloud platform the 901, the 710 there, the 902, the 920, and they go click, 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 mass deploy the firmware updates, and then away you go.
Well, sorry, let me just come back into frame. That's
right.
Definitely, that's incredible, and just having it all in the one point, that's, you know, sorry, I'm an account manager in my normal job, so I'm always thinking about how can I provide the best value. You're always looking for the value add for the customer, because you want them to be happy and just feel like they're getting a good valued proposition, and this definitely ticks a lot of the requirements as far as making that happen for the customer. And you definitely do have the flexibility as well. So we've got the small microphone there, we've got a very big one over there, but then, so what's this black?
So this is what's called a linear array. So these other microphones, this 901, that one over there, they have elements that are on both an X and a Y plane because they're taking up a big surface space. This is called a linear array, so it's got elements coming down the middle in one straight line.
Okay.
This is called the MXA 710. This is actually the most physically versatile microphone that I've seen in the video conference market. You can, in the software design for this device, you can say, I'm going to install it horizontally under a display, or maybe above.
Yeah.
You could say, I'm going to do it vertically next to a display, or you could say, I'm going to install this inside a table down here, or I might even hang it from the ceiling. And it can work in those 4 different methods to actually cover whatever install is needed for the space. So you might have a room like this and you might have a really nice architectural timber slats that are going vertically down the room, and you want a microphone that's not going to block out that beautiful aesthetic there. You could drop this inside one of those gaps between those timber slats, and it's almost an invisible microphone into the space.
Hang on, can I just stop you there? I just want to clarify something. So, you said you can put this bar in your table. Now, my worst nightmare is coming into a conference room and it's sitting on top of the table. When you mean in the table, do you mean in the table?
Yeah, we actually we actually have a recess kit where you can actually cut a hole in the table, have this sunk in so it's at the same surface level as the table. Absolutely flush to the table. Or you can just sit it on the table.
That's incredible.
So we've had some customers that we know about who have rather aggressive acoustics in their spaces that makes it a bit hard for ceiling microphones to be deployed. And we've gone in and tested and put these on the table, and they've had a much better experience. Just through sheer physics of the fact that when you're on the table, you're naturally going to have the microphone closer to the people talking. So that's going to get to the microphone before the rebounding acoustics off the space as well.
So talking about, sorry, as a kid, I was always taught you never point the microphone where you don't want it picking up. So when we're putting this on the table and it's pointing up towards my air conditioning, that brings it back to the DSP, doesn't it?
It does, it does.
So when I put this facing up, that's our DSP, and that's highlighting the value of it, right?
It's absolutely helping. And then there's the bit of physics as well, because the people talking to the microphone are going to be closer than the noise coming from the air conditioning above as well.
Right.
So you're going to be able to counter that. Pure physics, sound travels and loses strength as it goes over distance as well. Okay. So the closer you can be to the microphone, the better your experience is always going to be. That's why all the big podcasters use those microphones on the boom arms. You know, you see all the Shure microphones on the boom arms because they're right up on it. That's where you're going to get the best audio. You can't do that in a video conference space. No. You can't do it in a collaboration room. You can't do it in a town hall where you might have 50 to 75 people all wanting to be picked up to be heard by the remote attendees, or linking up an office from, you know, a United town hall every 6 months from Melbourne, Brisbane and Sydney. You can't have everyone with an individual microphone, so you've got to find ways to do that as well.
Yeah. Well, I do know that if our executive committee walked into our boardroom with a set of condenser mics with boom arms at every chair, I don't think that could happen. So this is the solution around that. But the MXA series itself, it's got the network speaker, it's got the mics. What if I want to mute it? So if I want to have a mute button at quick draw, we can do that, can't we?
Yeah, so there's two ways to look at that. Because the P300 and the ANA USB are certified with Microsoft Teams and Zoom, you've got your Teams meeting panel, you can mute in that, and that will send the signal through to the system. But then we've also got what's called the network mute button here, which is a really nice little touch capacitive thing. It's in a little display case here, but everything that's inside the case goes under the table. All that you see on top of the table is just that white button on top. One higher education institution that's using this button not just as a muting button, but they're using it to start and stop their lecture record and lecture capture. Because at the end of the day, this is an IP-based touch capacitive controller that you can use that signal to go to anything, really.
So we can tell it what to do.
We can tell it what to do, but also in the parlance of using it with the P300 and maybe one of the ceiling microphones and the Dante speakers, we can tie all these bits together. Shure have designed a piece of software called Shure Designer where you can set all these devices up, and when you get on a site and you're plugging in live to them, you can just deploy that, and that becomes your installed system. Then the mute button becomes a very crucial part of that, particularly if you're got a larger, important executive or board level meeting. You want to give the CEO the ability to mute, or you might have a number of people around the table that at any point they might need to mute the entire in-room audio so they can have a side discussion or something like that as well. So if you can put multiple of those mute buttons into the same space, or you can just have one. You can have it wherever you need it. So
talking about CEOs, every CEO I'm sure loves to feel important, and they can do that with some of the Shure MXA series. That's with programmable priority of the microphone, right? So something like a Shure MXA 920, I can actually tell that to give our CEO's voice a little bit of a boost, or...
You can, yeah.
So how does that work?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. The Shure MXA range started with an approach of having multiple channels where you focus each channel on a particular part of the room. That's called beam forming. The beam of that channel is fixated on a particular position. in 2019, when we increased the ability to have auto mixing within the microphones, we could actually say that particular beam, if that's over the CEO, can be a priority or an always on channel. So no matter what other audio is happening around him, that audio can always go to the far end as a priority. Then a couple of years ago when the 920 came out, there's this mode called automatic coverage where you basically just tell the microphone everything in this footprint of up to 9 meters by 9 meters, just listen to audio from that. We're able to chop and change that automatic coverage into 8 different coverage areas, and there's a function called a dedicated coverage zone where it's a fixed 1.8 by 1.8 meter in space, where you can put that over a particular spot and say, no matter what's happening with everything else, always have this channel of audio going to the far end. And now with some new updates that came out in August, we now have the ability to not just prioritize audio in those spaces, but also do more noise management of stuff we don't want to hear. So these microphones can intelligibly manage different noises in a space and identify what's a human speech and what's not, and do what's called enhanced noise filtering. So if you're talking and one channel of the microphone is picking up on one side of the table, on the other side I've got an executive assistant banging away, taking notes on the keyboard on their laptop, the microphone will be able to understand that that's not voice, assign a channel to that, turn it down to make sure it's not interfering with everything else that's happening.
Nobody wants to hear a keyboard, no.
Absolutely. And then with the 920 we have even higher functionality called virtual acoustic boundary, where we can say everything that's not in a coverage zone, the microphone will still listen to it and add it into that same acoustic echo cancellation process that it does for the far end, and removes it almost completely as audio at all. So if you've tucked the coverage area in to make sure the door's not covered, sounds coming from the door, it will eliminate those before anyone even realizes.
So if we're having a big all staff meeting and anyone at the boardroom table needs to be heard, but all the guests around the outside filling out the space, we don't want them to be
observers
heard.
Maybe,
Observers. We can actually separate that and give audio to the one and take it away from the other.
Yes.
That's incredible. Hey, look, Chris, while I've still got your time, is there anything else about the Shure range that you just think people need to know about?
Well, I think the best thing about Shure is it's based around people being able to be functional, people being able to have intelligent conversations, particularly in and out of video conference rooms, but also Shure's fun too. So we've got a bunch of different stuff that speaks to all that. There's new certified, OBS certified gaming microphones that have just come out as well. There's all sorts of stuff. I actually use one of the Shure USB podcasting microphones as my personal meeting microphone. I take it with me. It's in my backpack here. I set that up on a little stand and I have all my video conference meetings with that. I love it. I love being able to be heard well because I've got good quality audio. And we've even got some of the Bluetooth-based microphones here called MoveMic, where you can actually, if you're on the fly doing a little corporate video for content, these two microphones can pair directly to your phone, and you can record a video directly on your phone using the Shure Motive Video app and cut a little promo, cut a LinkedIn thing. You're at a trade show, you want to show people and get them to come down. Have some really good quality audio rather than just trying to shout at the camera that might be someone else holding the phone. Absolutely, these little Bluetooth suckers can just clip on anywhere and away you go. And
you're ready to go.
And you don't need anything else in between. It just goes Bluetooth directly back to your phone, and you can pair both of them with that as well.
So, and I think the thing that you've pointed out to me though, right, is Shure has a product for every consumer. I remember when I started off in retail about 4 years ago, I found out that the Red Hot Chili Peppers, one of my favourite bands, recorded some of their songs off of the dynamic microphone, the Shure SM7B, and ever since then I had to have one, right? And every consumer, whether it is karaoke or it's a high-end boardroom setup for your highest level executives, Shure has a product for everybody.
Absolutely. If you go to YouTube and look at microphone reviews, probably 95% of the videos will review a Shure microphone versus someone else as well. And one of my favourite bands growing up was Motorhead. And Lemmy, who was the bass player and lead singer of that band, always used the SM7 or SM57 as his vocal microphone. Most sound engineers use those on snare drums or guitars, but he used it on his voice. And it influenced a bunch of other people who wanted to be just like him to do that. You know,
And a lot of people use condenser microphones, yet we've got bands prioritizing dynamic Shure microphones just because of how good quality the product is. So this is the Shure range, and now you're with Jans, Chris, so did you bring anything other than Shure for us to have a look at today?
I actually did bring something that really works in well with this Shure product, and I'll just pop off camera and pick that up for a moment. So,
what's this? Can I have a look?
Okay, you can have a look. This is an amplifier.
Blaze.
Blaze is a Danish company, and I've actually got a couple of their team members coming down to visit us soon. But I spent some time with them at Infocom over in America this year. Blaze has been with us for a little over a year, probably maybe a year and a half. They're an amplifier company that make some really high quality compact amplifiers. If you're in a space where you need to have a bunch of speakers or front of room surface mount speakers, say you're using the next to a P300 or something for a room, but it's a larger space, an auditorium, you need to power larger speakers than what we can do with the Shure Dante ceiling speakers here.
Yeah.
Or maybe the cost of running cabling to every Dante speaker when you need maybe 30 of them. You need to go back to traditional ceiling speakers. This is a great cost-effective, highly functional amplifier that works well with that. What's really cool about this one, it can take Dante signal, the same Dante signal that goes to all these Shure devices can come straight into this unit. And you can manage a lot of the qualities in there without having to have a big third-party DSP as well. So the DSP, the P300, can talk and send signal straight to the Blaze. You can do high functioning tuning and conditioning of your loudspeakers through this amplifier. You can also do a similar network connectivity, manage multiple devices across your fleet. If you've got a bunch of them in different meeting rooms or across the floor, they've got a similar sort of web-based GUI platform where you can actually see all your devices. Everything we're doing within this space, particularly the corporate and conference space or higher education conference space, really comes back to being able to know what's happening on the network, know how devices are behaving, and Blaze really fits into that along with the Shure stuff as well.
And it's all relevant, right? Every gear set here can complement each other in one way or another.
Absolutely.
Now, there goes my question about whether it's Dante, but is there any further specifications that scream out to you about this amplifier?
What I really like is the fact that it's half RU rack space, it's not extremely deep, so this could also potentially go behind a display or a credenza. It can go in a rack if you need it to. But we've also got a more traditional approach to some of the audio. So we've still got your old analog RCA inputs as well, or analog Euroblock, or the more commercial style connectors. Then we've also got a GPIO here. So some basic legacy control systems can still connect to this, as well as network control. And you've got digital audio in and out. So if you're maybe doing something coming from a DVD player or something like that, you can absolutely use this as a mini matrix as well to manage different things. The real power of this becomes apparent when you're able to plug it in on the network. It also, for commissioning purposes, has its own mini Wi-Fi service point. So if you're installing these en masse as an installer, you can actually connect to an SSID emitted by this, set it up, commission it, then you can decommission that standalone Wi-Fi hotspot, so it's only working on the back network connection. But you can absolutely set it up just with your mobile phone as well.
So you allow for old infrastructure, but at the same time you're still paving the way for new infrastructure.
Absolutely. So you're bridging that gap between maybe you've got legacy equipment that you need to just upgrade your amplifier. Yeah. That's fine. And then you can look at the next step that you need to upgrade as well.
And so you're future-proofing and being able to support your current equipment at the same time, which is always incredible, because the amount of times people go, I need an upgrade, or I need a new amp, or I need a new something. And it's a hard conversation to have of, well, you need to replace this, and this. Whereas this amplifier, you can just replace it, and also allow for that future-proofing.
Yeah, when you can't do everything all at the same time, you can absolutely go step by step.
Awesome. Well, that's really cool. Is there any other products or any other key features that you need to point out while we've got you, Chris?
Okay, there's one more thing. Hang on, but wait, there's more.
Is that your elevator pitch?
My best elevator pitch.
There's more.
There is an increasing need on the market to associate and accommodate bring your own device solutions.
Okay.
What we have here from our friends at Blustream is their implementation of the latest HDBaseT chipset from Valens that allows USB 3 now to be extended over Cat 5.
Wow.
So when you're actually going between devices where you need to have someone bring their laptop from and do a bring your own device solution or presentation, transmitter at the table and then a receiver back behind the display, USB 3 over Cat 5 or over a network cable has been a big desire in the marketplace for a long time.
Yeah.
And now it's actually here because the manufacturers behind those chipsets actually got on board. Blustream came out with this almost immediately. We had this on display to integrate with a Logitech HD rally camera,
Yeah.
a 4K rally camera, plugged in to these devices. Between these two devices, we had a 50-meter roll of Cat 5, and you had almost zero latency on it, or imperceptible latency on that signal chain.
Incredible.
So the effectiveness of that being able to go over the network cable was really, really good as well. So this becomes your ability to connect your laptop to the rest of the devices in the space. So
Okay. So once again, HDBaseT for the everyday user.
Yep.
So HDBaseT, if I were to use a 30-meter HDMI cable to go from one end of my TV to my computer, would that work?
it would work. It'd be an expensive cable to have it work over that distance.
What if I only want to spend under $1,000 for a cable?
Well then, if you need to make sure you're managing your cable budget, you're not going to be able to afford a native HDMI cable that goes all that length.
So it's not going to work.
It costs a lot. So
Right.
you need to be able to plug it in one end, use a less expensive cable to extend that out, and that's what HDBaseT does. It uses a network cable and the multiple pairs in there, changes the signal slightly, transports it over there, and then gets it out the other end. So you're only using maybe two small cables at either end, but a larger network-based cable that's easy to deploy on the end as well.
So we can grab a large format cable, suppress it down, send it to wherever I need it, and then on the other end it's going to work perfectly
Yeah.
with a low cost, easy to deploy solution.
Absolutely. And when we talked about the cable planning for a build, Cat 5A, Cat6 cable, same thing as you do with the Shure equipment. Just add that to the cable spec and then away
I
you
have a
go.
look?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's incredible.
So one's a transmit, one's a receive, and you can do power on one end of it and it will actually power the other side of it as well. So
I notice USB-C cables here. Is there also a HDMI option as well that Blustreams provide?
Yes, they do, absolutely. There's also the ability to do HDMI and USB over IP network as well. So
Wow.
video over IP and KVM capabilities over the IP network are not new to the industry. There's been a lot of KVM, keyboard, video and mouse solutions, where someone might need to control two different computers and they need to switch between them. That also is available over the IP network through some of the Blustream endpoints as well.
That's incredible. That would be smaller than my iPhone, Chris. That's incredible. So as far as getting it into a space and deploying it, you're not even going to notice it's there.
No. And just a little cable up through the cable caddy.
That's incredible. Do you have any other Blustream products that we need to talk about?
Oh, I do. I could go on for days, but I think that's about it for right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. Look, I hope our audience found some value in everything that we talked about today. You know, there was a lot to cover, and I hope that we did give the best explanation that we can to the everyday consumer. You know, you might be looking for a conference room upgrade right now, and we're just trying to highlight some of the value that the Shure products provide. Look, Chris from Jans has been vital to our succession at Videopro with the Shure product line because it is such a good product and it needs to be in more conference rooms all around Australia. Look, if you liked this format of the video, you liked Chris, you can always say in the comments that you want to see him again and we can make that happen. And be sure to like the video and just give us your comments, give us your feedback, because we're always wanting to talk about the products that you guys love. We'll see you back on the next episode. It might be with Chris for a Tech in 60 seconds. I don't know, you might need a comment. but we'll see what we can do. Thank you, and we'll see you next video.